Comedy, and I'm here to talk about the UNICEF report on children's wellbeing. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I've scoured and scoured that report and I can't find a single joke in it. So we're not really here for laughs. But I would say it's good to be here at Channel 4. It's not the subject of my speech, but clearly I think we will get a chance to talk about how important the role of the media is in children's lives and in shaping childhood. And as an avid TV addict myself as a child, I thought I'd share with you one of the ways in which TV really formed my political awareness and created a bit of an awakening as a small child. At the age of 5, the impressionable age of 5, in 1976, which was year of the drought, year of the Olympics, and the year that Jimmy Carter became American president. I was always a very early riser. I was always up before the rest of the family, and so I found myself regularly watching television on my own. And in those days, Channel 4 didn't exist, and nor did children's telly on early in the morning. And if it wasn't Open University on the test card, then all I could get was a bit of a news summary. And this one particular morning, I remember, I can still see as clearly as I did in that day, what I thought was one news story. And it involved some footage of an athletics race being run. And then a picture of some men being given medals on a podium and someone on the top of the podium. And then I saw a close-up picture of Jimmy Carter and heard the news that Jimmy Carter had won the race for the American president. In my childhood world, this was a very simple, rational fact of life. And over the next 3 years, I really enjoyed this magical understanding, but never surfaced it until my parents were explaining to me that the woman that I saw on the telly in front of me in 1979 was Margaret Thatcher, and she had just become Prime Minister. And I couldn't hide my astonishment that the woman I saw in front of me had just beaten anyone in 100 metres. But it was a long night that my parents had to demolish my certainty that this was how American politics ran, because I'd seen it on the telly. They weren't there and they didn't know. So it's powerful stuff going in. And still, whenever it's election time, I still kind of do a little quiet subconscious assessment of who I think would win. Wild sprints of hounds. But speaking about the UNICEF report, and again, this is where the joke stopped. The UNICEF report, as Adi had said, we know we came lowest out of 21 OECD countries. We came lower than Hungary and the US. The top scorers, as we also know from what we just heard, were really the Scandinavian countries, Northern European countries. Netherlands came number 1, Sweden, Denmark, Finland and Spain in that order. But just to go through a little more detail about the dimensions that the UNICEF report looked at. They looked at 6 different areas of children and young people's lives. The first was material well-being, in other words, freedom from poverty, essentially. And they looked at the number of children living in households below 50% of the national average income, workless households where no adult was in a job, access to the basics of life, things like enough books and the resources to be involved in learning. And on material well-being, we came 18th. Ireland, Hungary and Poland came lower than us, and this is where the Scandinavians completely dominated: Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland at the top. The second dimension was health and safety, and they were looking here particularly at infant mortality, low birth weight, deaths from accidents and injury, child and teenage deaths from accident and injury, and our rates of vaccination against life-threatening diseases. Now, in this dimension, we were around the middle of the table. We were 12, and unfortunately, we were still on the wrong side of the average. We were still below the average, but in a very, very bad report card for the UK, we should probably acknowledge that this was an area where we scored highest, again Scandinavia topping the leads. The third dimension was educational well-being, and they looked at literacy and numeracy by the age of 15. Now, on that specific measure, we were above average in the 21 countries, but we were rapidly dragged down by looking at how many young people stay on in education post-15 and how many young people fail to make any transition from school into further education, employment or training by the time they're 19. And when we added those together, we still came 70th. It's still poor showing, particularly to the attention and pride that we pay to our educational policies. In educational wellbeing, however, it wasn't the Scandinavians who were leading, it was Belgium, Canada and Poland. So perhaps some things that we need to look at there in other countries. The fourth dimension was family and peer relationships, looking at numbers of young people who live in single-parent families or in step-families, looking at how many young people said they got to spend time just talking to their parents every week, and indeed how many times they ate meals together as a family. And how many young people would describe their peers as kind and helpful. This was one of the ones that got quite a lot of attention. And our score just on that one really dragged us down, but we were by far the lowest on this dimension, with Italy topping the league. The fifth dimension was behaviours and risks, and I think this is what got probably the most attention in the press, and certainly it continues to get most attention in the press. We're looking here at healthy eating, eating fruit, eating breakfast, childhood obesity, substance use, alcohol, tobacco and drugs, underage sex, unsafe sex, teen pregnancy rates, and the extent of fighting and bullying in the lives of our children. And on this, we were off the bottom of the scale, really quite a league step below US, who were second at the bottom. And this is an area where Sweden and the Netherlands, again, lead the league table. And the last area, the last dimension, is called subjective well-being, which is a posh way of saying how happy and healthy young people feel. And this was all looking at young people's own ratings. I know we've heard about describing yourselves as happy, but ratings of life satisfaction, whether young people said they liked school a lot, whether they rated their own health as poor or fair. And this was an area where we didn't collect figures for the US, but the UK came bottom of the ones that we did. And again, Netherlands was highest, same in Greece. So those are the headlines. That's how this shocking report card was constructed. But the question is, how should we react to this kind of shocking finding? Well, we could react by questioning the report itself. And indeed, the government, on the day of the launch in particular, were keen to point out to us that some of the statistics were several years old, that there had been some changes, we've achieved some progress in reducing child poverty, we've achieved some progress on tackling teenage pregnancy, that the Every Child Matters agenda that the government has launched was starting to bite and make a difference, but wouldn't